It had been a season of relentless storms. Snowflakes, thick as woolen blankets, swirled across the barren landscape, making it impossible for anything to survive. The inhabitants of Elora, an isolated settlement in the farthest reaches of the planet Osmerus, had long learned to stay indoors when the storms hit. For weeks, they hadn't seen the sun. A cold, gray sky had been their constant companion, and the wind howled, unrelenting, against the walls of their homes. Yet, on this day, as the storm reached a new crescendo, something extraordinary happened. It was Lyra, one of the planet's indigenous scientists, who first noticed the faint signal. It was weak, but there, flickering from the depths of the frozen plains. An anomaly, a strange warmth pulsed from the signal like a distant heartbeat, coming from beneath a blanket of snow. Lyra's pulse quickened, and with the help of her team, she traced the signal to its source. The ground was thick with snow, layered over the frozen earth. But as Lyra and her colleagues began to dig, they uncovered something that none of them had ever expected to see. There, buried in the snow and ice, was a woman. Her skin was pale, her long dark hair tangled and matted with frost, but it was the faintest signs of life that kept Lyra's heart from sinking completely. Her chest moved with slow, shallow breaths. The woman was alive, but just barely. Lyra immediately sent out a signal for assistance. The discovery was too important. In moments, the settlement's emergency team was assembled, and together they worked quickly to bring the woman into the safety of their base. The intense cold and the perilous conditions outside made it difficult to move quickly, but Lyra couldn't afford to lose any more time. They had to get her inside, get her warm. Lyra's team, trained for medical emergencies, immediately went to work. The woman's temperature was dangerously low, her skin a startling shade of blue. Her extremities were stiff with frostbite, but the core of her body remained warm enough for them to believe she could survive. As they gently undressed her and wrapped her in thermal blankets, Lyra's curiosity grew. Who was she? How had she survived so long in the snow? The woman didn't look like one of their own. Her facial features were delicate, almost ethereal. Her eyes had a sharp, reflective quality, one that suggested she was not native to Osmerus. She's not from here, Lyra muttered under her breath as she worked to restore the woman's warmth. Perhaps from off-world, one of her colleagues suggested. Lyra nodded, her mind racing. They were isolated in the extreme northern hemisphere, surrounded by snow and wind. There was no way anyone would come this far without a reason. Get the communications array set up, she said. We need to know where she came from. Maybe there's a ship out there, lost or damaged. As they waited for the woman to stabilize, Lyra stayed close by her side. The strange warmth of the woman's body began to work its magic, and gradually, the frostbite on her limbs began to recede. They kept her temperature stable by applying more blankets, using medical heaters designed for such emergencies. Hours passed before the woman's eyes fluttered open. They were a deep, vivid blue, glinting with intelligence, and for a moment, Lyra felt a sense of awe. This was no ordinary human. Where am I? The woman's voice was soft but clear. It sent a shiver through Lyra, not because of fear, but because of the sheer resonance of it. There was an almost foreign quality to the way she spoke. You're safe, Lyra said gently. We found you under the snow. You were very cold. What happened? The woman's eyes seemed to focus on Lyra for a moment, scanning her face with an almost otherworldly intensity. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she tried to sit up, but collapsed back into the blankets, weak and disoriented. Don't try to move yet, Lyra urged. We need to keep you warm and hydrated. The woman blinked slowly, taking in her surroundings. I don't remember how I got here. Her voice was tinged with confusion, and something else, something that felt like a subtle warning. Lyra studied her more closely. There was something unnatural about her. The way she moved, the way her eyes never seemed to blink quite like they should. She wasn't just some lost traveler. This woman, whoever she was different. Lyra's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a console beeping in the corner of the room. One of her colleagues had managed to triangulate the signal, and the results were startling. "There's no ship," the colleague said. "This signal is not from any known vessel. It's coming from her." Lyra's heart raced. "What do you mean? Her?" The colleague nodded. "We've never seen a signal like this before, but this energy is being radiated from her body. It's not like anything human." The woman, still lying in the bed, seemed to stiffen, as if sensing their scrutiny. Her eyes darted to the team, a faint flicker of something, fear, in her gaze. "What are you?" Lyra whispered, almost afraid to ask. The woman's lips parted slightly as though preparing to speak, but then stopped, her expression twisting into a frown. Her eyes flickered for a moment, a slight glimmer of something alien in their depths. Slowly, she said, "I'm from the stars. A traveler. A seeker of knowledge." Her words were vague, but there was a strange resonance to them that made Lyra wonder just how much this woman knew. But then, her body suddenly shifted again, almost as if a wave of cold had washed over her. Her once warm skin grew cold again, and she stiffened as if she were struggling against some unseen force. Without thinking, Lyra moved closer. "No, don't fight it. We'll help you." But the woman's eyes widened in fear, and before Lyra could understand, the woman raised her hands, glowing with an ethereal blue energy. A surge of energy filled the room, the force of it pushing everyone back, knocking them off their feet. The lights in the room flickered, and the temperature plummeted in an instant. Lyra gasped, her breath visible in the freezing air. "Stay back," the woman's voice rang out, now clear and commanding. "I can't control it, please." The energy pulsed one last time, and then silence. The room was still, except for the sound of their heavy breathing. Lyra slowly pushed herself up, shivering from the cold. The woman lay motionless in her bed, her eyes closed, her energy seemingly drained. Without hesitating, Lyra gathered the team. They needed to act fast. As they applied the heat packs again and began stabilizing the woman's temperature, Lyra realized one thing. This was no ordinary human being. She was something far beyond what they had ever encountered. A traveler from the stars, with abilities and knowledge that would change the very fabric of what they knew. As Lyra looked down at the woman, a quiet determination settled within her. The future had just changed, and now they had a responsibility, not just to help her, but to learn from her, to understand where she came from, to unlock the mysteries of the stars she came from. And so Lyra made her vow. Whatever it took, they would protect her. They would use all their knowledge, their bodies, their strength, to ensure that this traveler was not lost to the cold again. The future had arrived, and it had found them under the snow.